Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is July 26th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control and he does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. I apologize for that snafu. I put new USB speakers on my production computer for my open broadcaster where I do all my producing of the actual video feed that goes over to my streaming computer. And I couldn't figure out why I was getting blasted out of my headphones. And here it went to a default setting in my on my audio playback devices on the computer itself in Windows 10. And I accidentally hit a button up here on the soundboard. And I wasn't getting the USB through anymore, so I had to undo that button. I figured it out there at the last second, so hopefully, Dave, you can hear me now. Hopefully all the snafus are over. If you've been listening on Blog Talk Radio, the beginning of that will be edited out, and we'll start over. We'll start this over again. I entitled I titled the program today, "A Lot of What the Federal Government Does is Unconstitutional." And this has been an ongoing theme with me since 2008, since I started my journey on Blog Talk Radio. It's been a favorite theme of mine on YouTube because the U.S. Constitution is the controlling document for the federal government. And it is the supreme law in the land as far as the enumerated powers of the Constitution goes. And we've been talking about some unconstitutional powers like the federal government govern over anything to do with drugs, whether they're illegal or legal. There is no constitutional controlling authority for them to do so. We explained over the past couple of days, we were talking about the Commerce Clause and how they've stretched the Commerce Clause way past its original meaning. And the Supreme Court has had a hand in this. And the Supreme Court has been wrong in this. I know there's a lot of people out there that are just going to shake their head at me, and I've had people in the past just tell me I had no business even talking about the Constitution because I did know what I was talking about. And then when I'd quiz them on the Constitution, they had no clue what the Constitution was even about. Now, I'm not on the same level as other teachers like Chris Ann Hall and Hillsdale College as far as when it comes to the Constitution. What I'm trying to prove to you is that a simple, ordinary man or woman, but I'm using myself as an example, can sit down, read, study, and understand the Constitution the way the framers actually penned it and framed it and the original intent of the meaning of the words that they used. And so I use myself as this example. If I can do this, anybody can do this, and you can no longer use the cop-out, well, I'm not a constitutional scholar, so I really don't know what it means. To me, that tells me that either, one, you're too lazy to go read the Constitution, which may be a little harsh, and I don't want to be harsh, or two, you just don't want to take the time. You don't care enough about this country and about where this country is heading to actually know what our founding documents that actually created the political system that we have today that governs so many aspects of our daily lives. And people don't realize or understand that. And honestly, if there is one drawback to a representative republic, it's this: that people vote people into office, and then they forget about it. They put everything on autopilot with those folks. They never look over their shoulders. They never oversee their decisions when it comes to the government, and that's the only drawback I see. But this is something that we, the people, need to work on. We don't need a law telling us we need to be engaged in our politics and with our representatives and with our federal government, our state government, our local government. Too many people have checked out of the political process and have allowed bad actors to get in there that are not carrying out the stewardship that the people of the colonies originally granted to the states, and then the states granted to the government. They are misusing and abusing their stewardship that has been granted to them. And Dave has a real good quote here by Teddy Teddy Theodore Roosevelt, nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. Your show must be worth having. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if I know how to take that one, Dave. Because my show sometimes is an effort and it's a pain and it's difficult. But seriously, folks, we have to, as a society, as a culture, as a people, as citizens, as Americans, I don't know how many other adjectives I want to put on there. We have to get our minds wrapped around that our government is not what the founders intended it to be, and that we've lost, not all, but we've lost a lot of our freedoms and our liberties, and some of them are due to economic struggles that the government, or I should say economic burdens, that the government put on the people, that if they were following the Constitution, the people wouldn't be burdened with these struggles at all. But people, and it's mostly the anti-freedom crowd that thinks socialism is the best way to go. And again, to me, socialism is a checked out mentality. That we give the reins of power to our overlords, and they're supposed to be benevolent and take care of us in the best way possible. But that never happens. It never comes about. Because eventually you're going to look out through your the bars of your gilded cage and wonder where your freedom went to under socialism. And so we have this checked out mentality as Americans. And a lot of this has to do with the bread and circus that goes on every day. We go to our jobs and we want to escape when we get home. So either we escape in movies, and I'm guilty of that, escape into movies or sports or gaming. Now, nowadays, gaming's a huge thing on the internet, bigger than I ever thought it would be. So we have all these escapes so we don't have to deal with the realities of life. And the realities are, folks, if we allow people to make decisions for us that we rightly should be making for ourselves and guiding our own lives, we have nobody to complain to because we've checked out of, and I'm going to say this, and it might be a little harsh, we've checked out of life. We've absolutely checked out of life. And that's a sad commentary on the American culture, on the American people. I've been talking with a gentleman on YouTube who said he was a Christian. He's not anymore. And we were talking, I posted a video on my YouTube channel, Christians have taken back the rainbow. And it's an article about Ken Ham on the Ark experience down in Wilmington, Kentucky, where at night he's putting the rainbow colors up on the side of the Ark, and he explains why he did that. And if you don't even have to be a biblical scholar. If you know the story of Noah and the flood, you know that the rainbow was set into the clouds by God as a sign for the covenant, that he would never destroy the earth by a flood again. And so this gentleman's been engaging me. He's been very nice to me. I've been very nice to him. I said, basically what I said in the comments were that, and I'm just going to get over to them real quick here before I get into the rest of the show, because this is important. This feeds into our ideology of what we're doing today as Christians in that. Basically, and hopefully I got that, yes, I got that off there. He goes, I said, I titled it, Christians Have Taken Back the Rainbow, and he says, in that case, the pagans should take back Christmas, Easter, and the solstices. And my response to him was, that would not bother New Testament Christians. You will not find any Christian in the first century celebrating either of these holidays. I'm talking about Christmas or Easter. Also, the Bible never authorized these holidays or the celebration of them. And he said, I have never heard anybody referred to as New Testament Christian. What is the difference between a New Testament Christian and a Christian? And I told him, I said, New Testament is used as an adjective to differentiate us from denominational Christians. We believe in following only what the Bible says and not man-made creeds or doctrines. There are a lot of folks who claim to be Christian but do not follow the New Testament in pattern or doctrine. And he said, well, thank you for your quick response. I find it interesting, the different variations of Christianity and how they view the world. I myself am no longer a Christian, but I do think that everybody should choose to follow what they believe in. And he's right. God actually allows us to do that. I can't force my religion on folks like Islam forces, their religion on folks, convert or die. And that's a fundamental principle. There's a lot of folks in Islam that don't buy into that. And they would actually be considered in our parlance today denominational Islams because they've diverted from true Islam and the tenets of Islam. And I don't want to get too far afield here, but even and this is the strangest thing of all, even in the matters of religion, people have checked out. They've absolutely checked out. They've let these leaders throughout history dictate to them what the scriptures say instead of going and reading the scriptures for themselves. And I know for the longest time it was hard. It was hard for folks because they weren't educated, and there are some reasons why a lot of the peasants weren't educated, because if you're not educated, you don't get to be thinking about these ideas about revolting and your own freedoms and liberties, because you're not thinking about them. You're not educated that way. And it wasn't until the printing press and the Bibles were, by threat of death, folks were passing out English Bibles. Tisdale, he was on the run most of his life from the Catholic Church and the Establishment Church in England because of that. But throughout this history, and even after we had access, mass access to an English Bible, I'm talking about English-speaking folks, there's still this idea of checking out. That we just sort of sit in the pews, we listen to what the priest or the preacher says, and yeah, that sounds good, we're going to believe in that. And they never, ever internalize it. They never make it their own. They never go study it on their own to see if what the preacher or the priest is saying is true. I mean, I grew up Catholic, folks. And it wasn't until I actually read through the New Testament, and this was after I was baptized into Christ and was shown before that, where my belief systems didn't follow the New Testament. The New Testament pattern of worship and belief and doctrine and anything. And then once I finally read through the New Testament for myself with the idea of looking in the New Testament and trying to find, the different things, the different tenets of the Catholic faith, and couldn't find them, then I was kind of mad about it. But it wasn't until then that I actually internalized it, saying all my life as a Catholic I was being lied to. Because I had checked out. I had checked out. And I don't know what Dave's thoughts are on that, but I think they're probably along the same lines as mine. There's a lot of people that have just checked out of life and just let other people deal with it. There is this whole millennial generation that doesn't mind living with their parents, that doesn't mind, sort of living off the trough of their parents, because either one, they can't find a job, or two, they're unwilling to do work that they feel is beneath them, or whatever the reasons might be. Now, some have legitimate reasons, but not every one of them. And so my point in saying all this is that when you check out of life and don't face the difficulties of life, you never grow. When you don't face the challenges of life, you never grow. And when you allow other people to make those decisions for you, you get what you get. I mean, you absolutely get what you get. And if you don't like what you get, tough. You're the one that checked out. You're the one that let this stuff go. And then when you got guys like me, and I'm not saying I'm totally checked in or plugged in, but I think I'm more so than more folks with things that affect my life. And I'm talking about, my Christianity, my religion, if you want to say that, but my Christianity and politics and economics. Those are the big three that most people barely even give them a passing thought within a year, let alone every month or week or daily. Those are things I contemplate on daily. My faith, the politics we live under, and the economics of life. And if we really don't start looking at these things, we're going to come to a point in this country, and it's inevitable if we don't start checking back in, that we're going to end up like Venezuela. We're going to have a bunch of ne'er-do-well elitists out there that think they know better how to direct our lives than we do. And it's a sad commentary on the American people, who we were very, in the beginning of our country, we were very robust, educated, forward-thinking, problem-solving, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get out there at dawn and work till dusk, and, be very industrious to build this great nation that we have today with the blessings of God. Where are those, where are those pioneers today? Dave says, if you can't get the government to take care of your education, health care, and finances, why not let someone else handle your eternal destiny as well? He says, if you can, not can't. If you can get the government to take care of your education, health care, and finances, why not let someone else handle your eternal destiny as well? Yeah, might as well. Of course, on the day of judgment, that's not going to sit very well with you. But, if that's your mentality and that's what you want to do, go for it. Just don't drag me along for the ride. And don't criticize me because I want to do things for myself. That I want to take care of my family. I want to take care of my health. I want to take care of my belief in God. And those all should be honest pursuits. What I mean by honest pursuit is we should always search for the truth. We should always search for the truth. And we need to use facts to back that up. We need to use facts. We need to actually have, and I think God gives us more than enough facts. And as a matter of fact, he told Peter in 1 Peter, he says, God has given us everything that pertains on the life and godliness. We have everything we need to live a godly life before God. And even in religion, folks, there are politics and there are economics. So there. So there. Oh, my. The official drink of the Dan Columbus Show is Rocky Mountain High Brand. And matter of fact, I have some lemonade on my desktop, and that's my favorite flavor, and that's what I get. Tastes good. 16-ounce can, 16 grams of sugar, of natural cane sugar, 100 milligrams of hemp oil, and that seems to help with my pain and calm my muscles down. They have a whole line of energy drinks, iced tea, it's black tea, energy shots, Eagle Spirit water, protein bars with hemp-infused oil. They have a whole line there, folks. So this is the official drink of the Dan Clemens Show, and by full disclosure, I am an investor in the company, and I have stock in my retirement portfolio, as it were. So that's just the full disclosure there. Today's daily Bible reading comes from Ephesians chapter 1, verses 11 through 12. In him also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will, that we who first trusted in Christ should be the praise of his glory. I just want to deal real quick here with that, about being predestined according to his purpose, or according to the purpose of him who works the things according to the counsel of his will. A lot of people wrongly think that predestination means that God looked at Dan Clements and said, you're predestined to go to heaven, and looked at this other person over here and said, you're predestined to go to hell. That is not that's not in keeping with the scriptures and the harmony of the scriptures when you talk about predestination. He talks about the predestined ones are those who believe in Jesus Christ and put on Christ in baptism as their Lord and Savior. That's the predestination. God knew that people would do that. But it's up to us to make that free will whether we're going to do it or not. God still leaves that up to us. Today's quote meal comes from C.S. Lewis. He who has God and everything has nothing more than he who has God alone. Think about that, folks. If people would get that idea about he who has God and everything has nothing more than he who has God alone, I think there would be a lot less materialism as far as pursuit of material things to take place of God. And I think there would be a lot more people actually searching for God and searching for the truth of God. But again, they don't have any time in their lives because they're out pursuing material things. They're out pursuing bread and circus. And they're checking out of life, as it were. Today's daily Bible lesson comes from Wes McAdams, and this from radicallychristian.com, and this article is pertaining more to elders. But I've stated this often in my Christian walk with God that the qualifications for elders, at least the ones that we can meet. I know women cannot be the husband of one wife, those type of qualifications. But I think the qualifications of an elder, the other ones that we can meet, I think there's something we're to aspire to. I don't think it's just for the elders to have all these qualifications. And this one here, 6 things elders can do to encourage ministers or preachers. And there's been too many times in my life in the church where I've seen that the encouragement only comes from, especially if we have an eldership, seems like it only comes from the elders. Again, and the more I'm thinking about this today, my mind is just expanding on this. I see too many people sitting in the pews who are sort of checked out, and aren't participating in the work of the church, not participating in encouragement. That's not my blessing. That's not my talent, as it were. And you know what? I've never ever read anywhere in the scriptures that said just because it's not your work, blessing or giving or anything like that, doesn't mean you're not supposed to be participating in it. It's just not your forte, as it were. You can't just check out. And maybe I started down the wrong path today, Dave. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just swimming with these things, idea about how people have actually checked out of life, and I never really thought about it before. Never really thought about it in this way. And this is how we've gotten this unconstitutional government. I mean, James Madison, folks, in the beginning, one of the framers of the Constitution, he knew that we needed government, but he also knew that we needed the people too to watch over those that we give stewardship to, or the governance of us too. We cannot check out on this. We absolutely cannot. And there's a huge problem here. There's a huge disconnect. And we need to somehow figure out a way to get folks checked back into life. And like I said, a lot of people disagree with me. Oh, I am checked into life. I go do this and I go do that. But does it really amount to anything of value? Does it really amount to anything worth having as far as, making the difference in life? I've been talking about this Jake Paul, who is, he was with Disney Channel, and they released him since all these antics of his, and they've actually been on the news out on the West Coast, out in West Hollywood. This guy is a YouTube sensation. He puts out a video within hours. He has millions of views. And the way YouTube pays out, this kid's a multimillionaire. He's 20 years old, multimillionaire, and his wealth is increasing, and his posse is increasing, and his troubles are increasing. And the young man never had the discipline to earn that money, so he's not going to have the discipline to spend it. And he's feeding into his ego. His posse is feeding into his ego. And everything he's doing on YouTube, in my opinion, there is no redeeming social value for what he's putting out on YouTube. I must have watched a dozen of his YouTube videos yesterday just to see what all the hubbub was about. And I just kept shaking my head. I said, there isn't an older, someone, maybe 5-10 years older that's a friend of his that can't sit down and talk to him, pull him aside and say, hey, dude, what gives? This isn't the way people are supposed to act. And in our society today, we don't have these mentors anymore. We have people that are so afraid to talk to each other because the anti-freedom folks out there got us kowtowed into believing that if we don't just let people live and not comment on it, that we're somehow being hateful or we're a detriment to someone's development. And I look back over my life and I thank God for some of the mentors I've had in my life. I mean, I came from driving a truck into the office at Metropolitan Trucking in Bloomsburg, PA, and I'm telling you what, before I was in that office, compared to how people comport themselves in offices, I was a barbarian. I had no clue how to be in an office. And if it wasn't for Patrick Bachman mentoring me, and he was tough on me. He was really tough on me, But I never resented that, Because deep down, and as I saw that I was doing things wrong and he was correcting them and having me redo these things, he made me a better. I started off teaching the drivers what Metropolitan want them to know about the company. Plus, there's federal regulations. We have to put them through these classes. So I was a driver trainer there for new hires. And then I went on to recruiting. I had no clue how to do the recruiting. He mentored me in that. He showed me that. And when I left out of a fleet of 350 trucks, I had less than 10 trucks empty. That's how good a job I did at recruiting, and I didn't do it with lying or anything. At least the guys that left that were honest with me said, you know what, the one thing I liked about you, Dan, you told me the straight skinny of the story. You told me exactly how Metropolitan works and how they're going to do things here. And doggone if you weren't right. I just can't work in this type of environment. And I can handle that. Constructive criticism, you know, and you know, I didn't have to lie to them where they got mad at the point they wanted to come and kill me or anything like that. And so I had this, you know, Pat Bachman, I'll never forget him. He's one of my great mentors, you know, and I give Dave and Al praise in here mentoring me in Christianity, in New Testament Christianity. Mark Evans was another one. If he's out there, I don't know if he's out there listening or not. Mark, are you listening? Can you hear? The guy challenged me. You know, they all challenged me, but Mark, I think Mark was, he challenged you, and he was also challenging to deal with, but in a good way. He was challenging in a good way, and it's it amazes me if you look back over your life, some of the mentors you had. You know, in high school, Mr. Umphris. You know, he was in English, and I hated reading. I hated anything about English back then, but his class opened my eyes to reading because it was a different type of class, and you know, he took time with the students, and he made you work for the answers. He didn't just give you the answers, he made you work for the answers. And those are the best type of mentors we have. We get back to Jake Paul. Where are the mentors in his life? Where are the folks, relatives or not, that are acquainted with him? They'll sit down and tell him straight, you know, that your behavior is reprehensible, and you don't do this in polite society. And we're raising a bunch of narcissists. Talking about narcissists, and this is one of the areas that I have trouble with President Donald Trump. He was over at the Boy Scout Jamboree in West Virginia yesterday, and I listened to his speech. And I'm honest, I'm just going to say this. I said, what a jerk, through this speech. It was a political speech to Boy Scouts. It was a political speech to Boy Scouts. And there's an article over at salon.com. The Boy Scouts are stunned by Donald Trump's jaw-dropping speech by Matthew Rosa over at Salon. And this was posted yesterday. And let me just get over here. President Donald Trump is in the hot seat for delivering an overtly political speech at the Boy Scouts of America's National Jamboree. And I'm like, I seen that word overtly. There was nothing overt about it. He went out there and went full-blown political, and when he was done, dropped the mic, and he was done, right? He goes on, in addition to denouncing the mainstream media, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, Trump used his speech to brag about his 2016 election victory. And I'm not going to read about that, but he said he also described his victory as an unbelievable tribute to you and all the other millions and millions of people who came out and voted for Make America Great Again. Now, one thing about the National Jamboree, you got a captive audience there. And if I was there, and the President of the United States, I don't care who it was going to be speaking there, I would go. But you got a captive audience. It wasn't like they actually came there to listen to Donald Trump. And that's part of where I thought, you know, man, this guy's being a real jerk about this, right? And I was reading other articles on this. This one goes on a little bit, but you got the gist of that, you know. And I use that because this, you know, because it explained my feelings or my thoughts about Donald Trump. One of the other ones, I think it was on Mother Jones. I didn't bring that one up, but they were saying that Donald Trump politicized the Boy Scouts, you know, of America. How dare he do that? And I'm thinking, Really? So what happened all those times up until the National Council decided to accept gay boys, and then eventually authorized gay Boy Scout leaders? That's not politicizing the Boy Scouts? Give me a break. But I agree. I have to agree with Sloan and Slate, Huffington Post, and Mother Jones had similar articles in there that, yeah, he was kind of being a jerk, because you don't go there to the Boy Scout Jamboree and talk about yourself. Very narcissistic of President Trump to do that. You should go there and talk about their accomplishments and what they're, encourage them on life, and if they keep going and, and keep accomplishing things in life, they'll go places and great things will happen. It should have been a speech of encouragement. I know maybe you could say his speech was an encouragement because he, hey, look what I did. But honestly, I didn't take it that way, and I wasn't trying to be super critical of Donald Trump and everything he, all the stuff he said there. But it like I said, amazes it amazes me, how narcissistic our society has become, and how everything sort of centers on Donald Trump. And I've sort of held back on saying stuff like that, but I was a Boy Scout for many, many years, and it really made me mad when they changed their stance, their moral stance on homosexuality in Boy Scouts, and they lost a lot of boys over that. They don't talk about that a lot, but they lost a lot of boys. They lost a lot of chartering organizations. The Church of Christ, where I'm at, was actually a chartering organization. When they did that, we finished out the year with the Cub Scouts, and the boys, we didn't have a troop at the time. We were trying to build one back up, and I told the parents and everything that the Church of Christ can't be involved with that. I can't be involved with that as a Christian, and as an organization. Now, individually, one-on-one with Boy Scouts and stuff like that, yeah, I could still do stuff like that. But as an organization, actually, that actively supports that lifestyle and doesn't denounce it, and it's in contrast to their other founding principles of Boy Scouts, I just couldn't reconcile that myself. Other people, other of my friends are still members of Church of Christ, are still involved in Boy Scouts. I've talked to them before. They're mad at me for taking my stance, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, why are you mad at me? So again, there's principled. You can take a principled stance just about anywhere. Make sure you're on the right side of things, and I do agree. I don't think the Boy Scouts should have caved into the social justice warriors. Because honestly, I was watching the Rubin Report yesterday, and he had Milo Yiannopoulos on there. It was a couple years old now, but basically after the SJWs that were behind the movement to get gay marriage legalized in the United States, the Supreme Court decision doesn't legalize anything, because again, the federal government has no laws, no enumerated power in the federal government to govern anything about marriage. So that decision in and of itself was unconstitutional. Again, we can do this exercise all day long. But he was saying once that happened, did you hear anything about the SJWs pushing for anything else for the gay rights or the gays in general? And if you think about it, not really. The SJWs got what they wanted. The folks that were behind that movement got what they wanted. And once they got gay marriage instilled, what they think was quantified in law, which isn't, then they moved on to the next thing. And seriously, and I think Milo Yiannopoulos was absolutely correct on that. They just left us in the dust. They got what they wanted and moved on to the next oppressed, victimized group. And if you think about it and you follow the logic to that, that's exactly what happened. And this is another thing that about being unconstitutional. I have this article here, and this is disturbing to me. This whole issue with Charlie Gard over in the UK. This is by Robert Shimshock over at the Daily Caller. And it's called "Children Do Not Belong to Their Parents." I read that headline, and I'm like, what are they talking about? And then I got to reading in it. They're talking about Charlie Gard over in the UK. A law professor stated Monday that children do not belong to their parents when discussing the Charlie Gard case. Law professor Ian Kennedy, who teaches health law, policy, and ethics at the University College London made the remark in a column for The Guardian. Recognize that children do not belong to the parents, said Kennedy. Second, when a claim is made that parents have rights over the children, it's important to step back and examine the language used. We need to remind ourselves that parents do not have rights regarding their children. They only have duties. That the principal duty being to act in their children's best interest. Urged law professor, if we are concerned with the language of rights, it is of course children who have rights. Any rights that parents have exist only to protect the children's rights. And this all comes from socialized medicine, folks. And this all comes from, and this is one of these things that I keep throwing back at these socialists here in the United States and the anti-freedom crowd that wants a one-payer system. Do you want the government to come in and say that, and the doctors are saying if they would have got Charlie over here in the United States at the beginning of the year, that therapy had a good chance of working, and he might have developed into a normal boy, but we'll never know that now. Because those doctors over there made the decision, took the decision out of the hands of the parents, and said, no, we're not going to allow him to leave the hospital, took it to court and everything. And where's the parents' rights? Where's the parents' rights in all this? And I know what he said here about parents' rights, but let me ask Mr. Ian. And let's say I was living over in the UK, and I'll just use our children. Were you there when my child got a cold and we had to take off work to take care of that child, to wipe his nose? Or if we got the flu bug, or fever, or a broken arm, or stubbed a toe, or got scared in the night? Where were you all those times that my child needed a parent to comfort them, to say everything is going to be okay? Where were you during all that time? It upsets me to no end. You got these intellectual, I'm going to bite my tongue on this, intellectual elitists over here think that they know best what your child needs outside of the home. And because of that, we have this little Charlie Gard over there that never really had a chance at life because of the socialized medicine that goes on in the UK. And we have people over here in the United States saying, we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't have medicine like the UK or Canada or stuff like that. And I say, thank God. Because that wouldn't have happened here in the United States. If little Charlie Gard would have been born in California and that treatment would have happened to be up in, let's say, Boston Medical, just for an instance, do you think there would have been any doctor or any court that would have said they can't take that child from California to Boston to get that treatment? Not in my country. Now, I know the courts have stepped in, like Terry Schiavo in Florida years ago, between her husband and the end of life thing with her. And I think that's wrong. I just think that's wrong, especially when it comes between a child and a parent. And it just amazes me how these ne'er-do-wells over here actually think, like I said, these intellectual elitists that think they know best. And as far rights, yes, there are inalienable human rights, unalienable, inalienable, whichever one you want to use, unalienable human rights, God-given rights to everybody, including children. But at what point can them children independently exercise those rights? And what right were the parents violating of Charlie's to try to take him out of that hospital and get him treatment over the United States? What right? They weren't. Matter of fact, guys like Ian and the state over in the UK and the hospital system and the court system over in the UK actually violated one of Charlie's most basic rights, is the right to life. And they denied that of him. And that's one of the reasons why I thank God I live in the United States. That's one of the reasons why I do this show, to try to explain these things to people and point these things out to people, the wrong-headedness of socialism. And make no mistake, even though the UK has gone towards capitalism in certain sectors in the economy, they are still socially socialistic. Can I say that? A double entendre, maybe. I don't know. But socially, culturally, they're still socialist. And they need to get out of that. And we need not to think like Bernie Sanders and follow ideas like him and Hillary Clinton and all these other folks in Indivisible and Common Cause that think we need to be like all these other socialistic countries. Because honestly, I don't know what I'd have done if I was Charlie's parents and they told me no. I don't know what I would have done. And I tell you what, I would not have been in a good place if they'd have told me I couldn't have taken little Charlie to the United States. I'm serious. It makes me that mad. You know, with my daughter, Deanna, and her, she had a stroke while she was still in the womb that caused some pretty good damage. I don't know what I've done if the doctor said, well, it's just going to cost too much and we're just not going to treat her. Oh man. They might have had to get a couple big orderlies after me. That'd have been the wrong thing to say to me, especially in the United States. You know, with the health system. I thank God that this happened well before Obamacare did. When we were in a more free, we have never really been in a free market healthcare system, but a more free healthcare system that was not having us under government control. So I just wanted to point that out, that little Charlie's going to die for what? Because people took the power of the parents out of their hands and the rights of the parents to parent their children as they see fit, as long as they're not abusing the child. And for the hospital and the courts to abuse that term abuse and saying, you know, that it wouldn't be dignified to do this. Again, where's Charlie's humanity in all this? Where was the guarding of his humanity, even the afterthought of his humanity at this hospital and the court systems in the UK? How dare they? How dare they disregard his humanity? No wonder why this world's messed up. We don't look at people as humans anymore. We look at them as groups. We identify them with things that we shouldn't be identifying them with. I don't care what your skin color is, and what your race is, what your ethnic background is. Mexican is not a race. Islam is not a race. Muslim is not a race. An American is not a race. It absolutely is not. And those that want to split us up by identity, I have no time for you. I'll sit down and talk to you, try to dissuade you of your ideas, but if you're not going to be dissuaded of your ideas, I have no time for you whatsoever. I'll run right past you and leave you sitting in the dust. Because I got better things to do than sit and argue identity politics with you. Because I think it's a non-starter. Matter of fact, I think identity politics is a Kafka trapping. Calling everybody a racist or Islamophobic or homophobic or whatever you want to call them. That's Kafka trapping. And if they can do that, then they can shut you down. But you got a big mouth like me that don't want to shut up. All right. Oh, a couple things in here. I want to get to the infrastructure spending because I know the time is waning. I want to get to this infrastructure spending, and I'm going to go all the way back to a founding father. I'm going to go back to James Madison. He's considered the father of the Constitution. I want you to listen to what the 10th Amendment Center has to say.
Did you know the federal government shouldn't even be funding infrastructure? It might sound shocking, but it's true. In fact, James Madison actually vetoed a public works bill funding infrastructure in 1817, calling it unconstitutional. The bill was for constructing roads and canals and improving the navigation of watercourses in order to facilitate, promote, and give security to internal commerce among the several states. Virtually every American today would say that this is exactly what the feds should be doing, but the father of the Constitution disagreed. Madison said, "The legislative powers vested in Congress are specified and enumerated, and it does not appear that the power proposed to be exercised by the bill is among the enumerated powers, or that it falls by any just interpretation with the power to make laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution those or other powers vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States." The amazing thing is that Madison actually favored the bill personally, but he vetoed it anyway because he put the Constitution above his personal policy preferences. That's the kind of integrity you should never count on from Washington, D.C. today.
All right, folks. And that was the 10th Amendment Center, and they were talking about James Madison. I got plenty of articles in there on the show that'll be up on the show notes page after the show talking about James Madison and his thoughts and some of the other framers of the Constitution and their thoughts on infrastructure spending. Even though he personally thought it was a good idea, he stood by his principles and stood by the principles of the Constitution, saying it's not enumerated power for the federal government. These infrastructures should be done by the states. And we're talking way back here in 1817. And so we're talking 200 years ago. And what's happened since then? How much money has been spent by the federal government on infrastructure? And we're not only talking about roads. A lot of people think infrastructure is roads and bridges. It's not just roads and bridges. It's like the Tennessee Valley Authority, you know, the Hoover Dam, Boulder Dam, all these dam works out through the West, all these energy projects, the infrastructure spending done by FDR with the CCW, something like that, and the under the Works Act that he had back under FDR, and all this spending by the federal government on this infrastructure, and none of it's authorized by the Constitution. It's rightly to be left with the states. Even, like I said, I love the interstate systems as a truck driver, but my question is, do you think that the interstate highway system would have developed on its own without a push from the federal government? Do you think these states would have got together and say, "Hey, we're gonna make it easier to get across our state from, I'll say Pennsylvania, from New Jersey to Ohio, and so we're going to have all these vehicles on a 4-lane highway going from the Delaware Water Gap over to Youngstown, Ohio, on Interstate 80, and we're going to build it." And they built it. Now, that road goes both ways. So if New Jersey doesn't build something, where's all that traffic going to go to? And it would behoove them to do so. Because they could look at it as a state and say, look, Ohio's or Pennsylvania's doing this. Maybe we should get on board with this. Find out where they're going to end their highway at the Delaware Water Gap. Maybe go in partnerships with them to build the bridge, go halves on the bridge going across the Delaware Water Gap, and extend this over here so the commerce can come from those states over to here more easy. And I believe Ohio would think the same way. And I think the interstate highway system would have organically grown without the force of the federal government. Now, the reason why the interstate highway system was thought of and built, it was the same reasoning they used for the Alaskan highway that went from Dawson City all the way over to Anchorage. And that was military use, to be able to move military goods and personnel from point A to point B easier. And they thought the Japanese were going to invade Alaska. And that's the reason why they built the Alaskan highway. After World War II, General Eisenhower said we need to have these interstate highways first and foremost to be able to move troops and materiel from coast to coast easier, and maybe not on rails. And we're talking about highways. And there was a big debate around this. And the problem with it, with the interstate highway system, was they're going to have to use federal tax dollars they're going to get from somewhere. They had to take them out of the budget somewhere, or increase the taxes to do that. And then now we have a federal highway system that the federal government uses to interfere with state regulations. That's how we got CDL, the commercial driver's license. California said, hey, this is what we're going to require in California for commercial drivers here. And so the DOT, the federal DOT said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do this nationwide. And the problem was, the argument was, well, if we don't do what California says, then drivers from here won't be able to go over there. Which, being a former truck driver, that may not have been a bad thing. But anyway, you see how when the federal government gets involved in something that's not within their purview, all sorts of rotten things happen. We have the CDL from California. Matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this. The young truck drivers don't know this. California, who originally started this, like within a year of it being totally implemented, wanted to pull out of it because they said it was going to cost too much money. Well, duh. You should have thought of that before you opened up your big yaps. The commercial driver's license that each state issued was good enough. All they had to do and what they were trying to do was stop people from having multiple driver's license. And as the computer age, back in the 80s, it still wasn't up to snuff yet. But as the computer age would have progressed, all they would have had to do was a couple states start up some databases where other states could look into their databases and see if this driver has an active license in that state. That would have took care of it, and we wouldn't have had this whole huge thing of federalizing the trucking industry. You see how when the government gets involved in things, it goes bad, it goes sideways, and it costs the American people in real dollars and puts an economic burden on the American people that should have never been there to begin with if we were following the Constitution. I'm hoping I'm making my points here today. I really want you to go over to the show notes page today over at thedanclemenshow.com. And if you're following episodes, it's episode 850, which is always down in the description. It's never up in the title anymore. It says, one-size-fits-all infrastructure spending doesn't work. And this is by Randall O'Toole, and this was posted back in November 19th in 2016. And it's a good article. He goes through and explains a lot of things, and this is what I've been saying when it comes to like the EPA. The one-size-fit-all regulations with the EPA, wetland regulations that would work well in Pennsylvania or Mississippi or something like that actually has wetlands, wouldn't work at all out in Arizona or New Mexico. Wetlands, it's all desert out there, or mostly. You see what I'm saying? The one-size-fits-all that would be the federal government doesn't fit everything. The same way with the education, and we're going to go through some more things. Tomorrow I want to talk about asset forfeiture as being a violation of not only the Constitution on the federal level, but I want to talk about asset forfeiture as being a violation of the Bill of Rights that a lot of states are violating. Now, there's a lot of states that are getting rid of asset forfeiture, and I'll explain to you what that is tomorrow on the show, but it is asset forfeiture. Was the first time I ever heard that, I thought, well, that's absurd. You know, taking somebody's possessions before due process of law, before there's any case or anything, and people not being able to get their stuff back. And that's very tragic. But there's a lot of other articles in the on the show notes page today about the infrastructure spending doesn't grow the economy, and it never has. That's always been the big myth. And there's a couple articles on that in there, one from Mises, or both of them from Mises, The Myth of Infrastructure Spending, and Infrastructure Spending Doesn't Grow the Economy. Both of them are over at Mises.org. I don't have enough time for this, but the court rules for D.C. concealed carry. Yay! Let's make D.C. safer, folks. Let's make it way safer than what it has been in the past. Oh, wow, that hour went by fast. I do apologize for the snafu at the beginning with the audio and everything. Well, I'm not adding anything else. I just wanted to put a set of speakers on so I didn't have to have my headphones on all the time while my production computer was working on some things. That's the music. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.